Hello, and welcome to this episode of Not Just Ghost Stories. I'm your host, Josh, joined by Jackie and Laura. We are a small team of experienced paranormal investigators, and here we discuss different locations that we've investigated, along with a little history and the paranormal evidence we found. Today, we will be talking about an investigation that we had at a high school that is actually still in use by students and staff every day. Because of that, we've been asked not to use the name. So the history of the school and the property will be a little different, as we don't want to use names to identify where it's at. So Jackie, could you give us a little bit of history about it?
Sure. The farm was actually there when Kentucky used to be a part of Virginia, so it's quite an older farm. We can start at 1832 with Robert G. Adams, and he was known as R.G. He was born in the county, and he resided here for most of his life. He inherited 50 acres of land where the school is built today. He farmed that land for many years, and then he also bought surrounding property from his siblings. He did have many slaves on the land. The records of them can't be found at this time. He also served in the Civil War for 4 years in the Confederate Army. During the dates of 1858 and 1874, R.G. had 2 wives. Not at the same time, though. Elizabeth Ashcraft, whom he married in 1858, and they had 4 children. Elizabeth died on the property sometime between the years when they got married and before his second marriage, on file in 1866. His second wife was Mary Bell McNamara. She died in 1874 from an illness, as did her infant child. That would have been Robert's 5th child. A few months later, R.G. Adams farmed the property until his death in 1920. He's buried in a local cemetery in the neighboring county. The property was then bought by the family that owned it until the time they donated that particular tract of land for the school. That was in the early 1990s. R.G.'s house stood on that land till it was demolished between 1974 and 1980. The surrounding area also has a lot of history. Another local farmer named Morris Lassing owned a large farm next to Adams' farm. Lassing is also said to have had many slaves and was not the kindest man. As of recently, there have been findings of Indian mounds neighboring the property where the school is today, most within a mile of the property, and maybe unknown to us, some on the property. The history is more diverse than what we've had, but deeds and records during that time are pretty hard to find. But that gives you a little bit of the history of the land, and perhaps maybe some insight into what's haunting this school.
Yeah. I mean, we're, in this whole entire thing, we're talking about schools and what's going on with them. And for us to actually do one where students and it's still active by, regular, human people, not spirits, is very interesting to do. We've done this school many times. I think I've lost count how many times we've done this school. But every single time we end up finding something different. We find some spirits that have actually stayed around there. And we're trying to figure out why they're either still there or why all schools are so active, right?
Yeah. My theory is it's like a train station. I have run into a spirit there are actually 3 schools on the property, and I have run into a spirit at one school and run into that same spirit at the totally different school, still involved in that property.
Yeah. And then actually with the actual school itself, there was a confirmed death when it was being built also, and that person still hangs around there.
Yeah.
So, there's still all kinds of pretty cool stuff. Now, Laura, this was one of your very first ghost hunts, was at this school.
Yes, yeah. It was to see if I could even tolerate sitting in a dark room. Turns out I can. I'm much better at it now than the first time we investigated this location. There is a lot of layers there. I mean, you can feel it when you get in there. The energy, you almost want to say that it's chaotic, but it's really just that there's just so much of it. And it just whizzes around that a lot of times it feels like you're in a tornado. if you really let your guard down in there and let the energy speak to you.
Yeah. Now, as you go through the school, you have different areas. Of course, you got your gymnasium, you got your auditoriums, there's dressing rooms for the auditoriums. Of course, you have your academic side and your cafeterias. And so there's so many different little nooks and crannies throughout, all of these schools that we go into. But this one being active at that point, you have all of that different stuff. So, Jackie, we're going to let's start in where one of the more active areas are in the school. Let's go into the auditorium area. What sticks out in your mind in that area?
Find a lot of slaves there, or it was the slave master's child we've talked to there. It seems to be slaves or the people that were there taking control of the slaves.
Yeah. Laura, does anything stick out about the auditorium area there?
I'm sure it does. That was the first place that we investigated on my first investigation. So a few places stick out for me when you're there. The catwalks, there's different things up there. For me up there, it was uneasy. I felt like whatever haunts that area likes to stay behind you. And for some reason, I just don't like things behind me. It's just not my thing, whether it's living, dead, evil, good. I just don't like it behind me. So that part is uncomfortable. But in the room where they control, the projection room, I guess, is what it would be.
Lighting room and stuff.
So in this particular one, there's a couch in there. And this is the first time I had ever investigated it. And the first type of equipment that I used was actually a pendulum, which is where I learned that I have very good luck with the pendulum. Seems spirits like to communicate with me that way. So I spoke to a young slave, a male. And really, he seemed kind of happy to be there now. Like, the feelings I got from it is, he sees how time has passed and how much further we've came along. And he seems to really enjoy being in the school, so he has no desire to leave.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, I remember walking in, you can be down at the bottom of the auditorium next to the stage and actually looking up at that room that you're talking about, Laura, and actually seeing things walk there and at the top of behind.
Yeah, and a lot of times your sight is drawn to there, but you don't see anything, which means that your brain saw it before your eyes could translate it.
Yeah.
And it's already gone.
Okay, can you clarify things though? Are you talking shadows? Are you talking full body apparitions? Are you talking balls of light?
Most of the time up there, it's usually shadow. If you're at the very top behind where all the seating and everything is, you'll see shadows run behind there. You there's exit lights, of course, because like we said, it's a working school. So the exit lights stay on all the time. You get these shadow figures that you can see running by, just that little bit of red glow from the exit light. Up top, it's exit light. You see some light every once in a while. You'll get this little flash of white, I guess you can call it. It's like a whitish, grayish mist kind of runs by, but most of the time it's always shadow figures.
One of the things about the auditorium that I found, I was on the stage and I heard the door open and close. It does a little click. And then when I looked up, I saw this white ball of light floating down the aisle and stuff. So that's one place where you can actually get the sound and the apparition together. A lot of times you'll just hear footsteps, you won't see anything, or you see shadows, but you don't hear anything. But in the auditorium, it seems like they're more put together.
Yeah. And it's true. I mean, catwalks, like Laura was saying, you hear walking on it. The catwalks are made out of plywood. It's a stable plywood base, and you can hear walking. Sometimes you might get wind. If it's raining outside, it's got more of a metal rubber roof that's on top. You can kind of hear that, but there's gravel also up on top of that roof. But you get the actual creaking of the wood that's walking through those catwalks, which is creepy almost. If you're standing there going, what is that running above me?
Well, I think too, when you're talking about an auditorium at a school, if you think about it, we also investigated a lot of places that are just a theater. It's something about that art that traps emotion, is what I think, and it is able to feed those energies and hold them there somehow.
Well, it's the emotions at the same time. I mean, a lot of plays been put on in this school, everything from musicals to, some type of drama or anything. So they can actually create those emotions. And when you get the emotion of an audience, who's to say that that energy isn't trapped in there also? So then you get all of this other different stuff that's helping feed anything that is happening in there.
Plus, if they have assemblies and things that they do in there, you're also compacting all those teenage hormones into a very small space. That has to go somewhere. It doesn't just disappear.
Yeah. Well, let's go on with that a little bit, because a lot of times, let's say pep rallies in the gym is a big one there. Jackie, you and I have been in there quite a few times after all of that. Have you ever noticed a change in the gym after all of the kids have been in there for some type of assembly?
Well, first, I'd have to say it probably doesn't help to have all that stuff where there's an open portal. And there is an open portal in that gym. So, yeah, you can go in there and you can get some what the hell feelings, or you can get some, happy feelings, or you can get some dead feelings.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I was kind of going to go with, was that portal, because it's a very odd portal. It's a...
and that portal existed before this school.
Yeah, I think
so, yeah.
I think at one point
I think
it
as
did.
well. I was just going to point it out.
Well, it runs from the ground. To me, it feels like it runs from the ground up toward the ceiling, and it feels like the flow is always that way to me. Every once in a while it switches. Sometimes it feels like it's a downflow, but most of the time it's one that's running from the ground up. Would you agree?
Yeah, most schools have some sort of haunting just because you have all the energy, even if it's just poltergeist activity. But this has also land energy.
Yeah.
Like there's something that's with the land there that's been there before, in my opinion, before we even had written records.
Yeah.
But since you did a great lead in talking about emotions and stuff, we have to bring up our favorite ghost, George Washington.
Yeah, I was going to get back to him here in a second. He is one of the funniest ghosts, I think, in the whole entire school, as many times, because he is not only... The very first time Jackie ever did this place, she asked his name. And Jackie, you want to go on with it?
Well, first, he shows up dressed in period costume, the wig and the blue suit, the ones that you always see Washington in his pictures and stuff. So I asked him, I said, "What's your name?" And he's like, "I'm George Washington." And I argued with him. I said, "I know George Washington slept around a lot, according to all the little plaques on the buildings, but I don't think he slept at the schools." We had an argument. He's like, "I'm George Washington." I'm like, "You're not George Washington." This ghost hunt, I took in facts and figures about George Washington and had it read to him out loud. And he still insists he's George Washington.
Well, at one point, he came to me when I was doing an EVP, and he told me he was Abraham Lincoln, and he laughed after the EVP. And I'm like, okay, this guy is a jokester. He's hilarious for me, but he is always... Usually it's George Washington, because the first time he came to me, I asked him his name. He said it was George Washington, and there's a little chuckle afterwards, and you're like, okay, dude.
Just having fun.
Yeah.
He is. He's one of my favorite ghosts. And I always like it when I see him and we get to argue about who he is.
Yeah. And he is one of the fun ones to deal with. Now, he is usually inside of one of the dressing rooms areas. Now, inside those dressing rooms, and Jackie, you were not there for this one. I decided we were going to just have fun that day. It was me and Laura and Eli and Jasper, our kids, 2 of the 3 kids. We decided to take them around. They wanted to do some ghost hunting, and we know what all is there. We took the REM pod. We had a recorder going. We had a few other things, I think K2 and stuff going, and we were in the dressing room. You remember this?
Yep.
We ended up having something that felt like, to me, more childlike in nature. following us around. And I think a lot of that was because of Eli and Jasper, honestly. But we're sitting in there, kept hitting the REM pod. None of us are anywhere near it. We're just sitting down. We're kind of away from it. I think the closest one was probably maybe about 6 feet away from the REM pod. Kept trying to play with it, but it didn't have enough energy. So
Right.
I ended up letting it have some energy, trying to draw it from batteries or wherever it could. This thing lit that REM pod up, the whole
All the
entire
way.
room, all the way, lit it up. It was probably the coolest thing.
I would love to have had a video camera because
Yeah.
the kids' faces were just,
Yeah.
it'll never be that raw again because that was the first time they'd ever seen something interact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the same time, I was really happy because I caught it on EVP. However, it drained my batteries on my recorder and I was not recording at the time, which made me very angry. But it was
You
still...
gave it permission.
I did give it permission. I was hoping it would draw from something else and not that, but that's where it went from. But hey, what else can I do? But to see Eli and Jasper, and the reason why I'm bringing them up is because they will be involved on this podcast, talking about this school also. Jackie, you want to kind of get into more about Eli and Jasper as far as why we're going to bring them in?
Yeah. We don't, I don't advocate bringing children on ghost hunts. A lot of ghost hunts are dangerous. Even the non-dangerous ones, I just finished one and was non-dangerous one, but I spent about 3 days with totally no energy. It just drained the energy and you didn't realize it when it was happening. It wasn't until you get home and get up the next day and go, geez, I can barely move my feet and stuff. So I am not a proponent of bringing children on, but I have had an experience that sometimes children are exposed to these things because they are developing or have psychic abilities. And it's my theory that if you're a psychic, you are like a bright light to all the spirits. They're attracted to you. If they're attracted to children and children don't know what's going on, it's very traumatic. So in that respect, yes, I do believe in exposing them in as safe way as possible to the spirit world.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why we brought them to this school, because we had been there many times. We know kind of what's good there, what's bad there, what is there, what isn't there, that type of stuff. Eli being, well, he's now 16. At that time, I believe he was around 14. Am I right about that?
Probably.
So we'd already started to see empath things out of him. So we kind of need to train him a little bit. Jasper, a couple years younger than Eli. We'd kind of started to slowly see things out of him. We actually noticed with Jasper, it actually started at Gaines Tavern with, dowsing rods that he started talking to people.
Yeah.
So we're now trying to open them up to it. So like Jackie said, we don't always say, hey, let's just take your, 8-year-old to, some kind of awesome place like Waverly Hills. But
Or let's take them to the Hinsdale house.
I think you have to take into effect too that between the three of us, when we do take them, that's a lot of experience on how to have self-protection. And I think if you have someone with you that you obviously love and care a lot about, I believe the protection that you have around yourself, you can extend to them.
True.
I would not let my children even go on a ghost hunt like that without being there.
Yeah. So, and the reason why we bring this up is they will be joining us on this podcast about this school, because there was other things that they ended up finding that we ended up researching that turned out to be true. So we'll let them tell you about that. But let's get further into our different stuff about the school. We found a portal. There's actually another one that was a little bit different up in the choir room area. Do you remember that one, Jackie?
Yeah.
It's a very, very different type of portal. I really wouldn't be able to specify what type of portal it is, would you?
No, not really. I know it's smaller. It's not as powerful as the one in the gym. But then you have to ask yourself, does that have anything to do with physical space? In the gym, it can be 10 foot tall. in the choir room, it can only be, 8 foot tall.
Yeah. So it's a possibility. So at this point, we've already found 2 portals inside of this school. Jackie, there's a possibility with other ones too. You and I work at this school. We've actually, been there. We are there every single day. One day I was in the break room and you came to get me and said, you have to come here. And I went running down. All the kids were in lunch. Yeah, you were working lunch that day. I was, like I said, taking a break in the break room. Came down, got me.
He does that a lot.
Hey, I usually work outside. But we go down there and you're like, here, walk over here. And as soon as we walked into it, it was almost like a field of something. I still can't put my finger on it to this day. But I'm almost wondering, do you think it was the kids' emotions at that time during lunch that was making it?
It could have been because it did feel like moving,
Mm-hmm.
like not stationary, wasn't going to stay there, but it was strong. And yeah, I mean, it made you kind of sit up and go, what the hell?
Yeah.
Maybe something was pulling all of their energies together to harness them.
Yeah, I mean, it was almost like a whirlwind. It was, but if you stepped off to the side and over in this little hallway that sits over there, you didn't really feel it anymore. If you stood closer to where they were at, it was strong. I mean, it was very strong.
Well, you can say whirlwind too, but when we did the most recent investigation there, where we had some teachers that came and participated as well, if you remember that alcove that I went and sat in at that one counselor's office,
Mhm.
whirlwind was what I described that as. And then after I had found you and we went back, it wasn't there anymore.
Yeah. So do you think that, let's go back to your theory about kind of like a train station or a train stop where things kind of come through. Do you think that energy just moves around the school like that, Jackie?
It could, because I've recently found out there's a lot of shadow people in the field house.
Yeah. Yeah, I can agree with that.
So, I mean, and that's just something that I just found it out. And not that I've been in the field house before, but it always seemed pretty dead and everything. Weird
No
term to
pun.
use, yeah.
So what do you
But,
feel off of them?
Well, actually, when I first got there, it was I first felt threatened. Now they're not as out there, as active, and I don't know if that's because I don't feel threatened because there's not as much energy, or whether it was just the threatening one has gone away or something. But now it's just sort of I guess you get used to it. Just go, oh yeah, shadow people.
I'd be really curious to know if, like, when it's not, say, the season for the field house to be at a high occupancy, if those shadow figures disappear and are only there when, these teams are in there. Most sports that use a field house have got some real driven emotions behind them.
True. And I can partly answer that question because working in this school during the summer, when it's supposedly just a minimal force, you don't get as much activity as when the kids come back. The activity ramps up.
Yeah. And that I have noticed too, summertime work, you're walking through the school, you get stuff here and there. Like I said, auditorium is a major hotspot. There's always something happening there. But something new came up on our last ghost hunt that Laura was just talking about, and that was Indians.
Yes.
Which was weird. It was in an area of the school that we hadn't really investigated her before. It's actually like a courtyard area. But that was the first time that I think I can say on that property running into anything that can be indigenous to the actual property itself other than the slaves because of that property. But this is before all of that. You want to talk a little about that, Laura?
Sure. I mean, we've only investigated this area one time, so I think there's still more questions than there are answers. But it was actually one of the teachers that we had there came and got me and asked me to come out there. And when I got out there, I didn't necessarily see what they were seeing, but I could hear someone. I could hear someone talking, like from under the ground. I know that sounds crazy, but that's where it was coming from. Somehow my brain knew that. And I was able to even like narrow down to like where she lay. And I'm most certain that that woman is buried there. I do believe that it is such a long time ago that there would have been no bones when the school was built. Because I'm talking this was...
Well, in that case, when that teacher came and got you and you kind of started doing something, you ended up coming and getting me and Jackie.
Yes, because there was even REM pod hits before I came to get you and Jackie.
Yeah.
So it was like the highest of it was when I first went out there. And I don't know if it was just, they were just trying to spew everything at me like, it's now or never, we got to tell her. And then it was just so chaotic in the beginning that I don't know if they just kind of were exasperated by the time that I went and got you guys. But
we did end up, I did a dowsing rod walking through that courtyard and ended up getting across, of the dowsing rods at about 6 foot long. I actually did it different ways. It was about 4 foot wide, about 6 foot long square, rectangle area.
yeah.
That was kind of close to where Laura kept pointing and saying, it's like over here, it's in this area. And I like I said, I walked the whole entire courtyard. It was cold, so we couldn't stay out there for too long. But we walked through the whole entire thing. I started, and it was always the same spot that I kept getting those rod hits. So there is a possibility that right in that area there could be some type of grave.
Now, one of the reasons why this was the first time, because I sitting here, I thought about it. We have never investigated the outside.
I was going to say the same thing.
This part of the building is a newer section. And while it is inside the building, it's like a courtyard. So it's between two buildings. So it's kind of outside, but it's inside.
It's outside, but it's contained. There's no like door or gate to get out besides going back into one of the buildings.
Yeah,
Right.
before that part was built, it was literally just the outside, and there was a sidewalk not far from there. So it's not anything that you ever investigated or did anything with on that point.
Right. Now I've realized we really should just go and just do the land.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'll get back to Jackie's point of, you've been in a couple other of those schools. I've been in a few other of those schools also that are on this property. There's stuff that happens over there.
Oh, yeah.
In those other schools. One, the one we're talking about here is a high school specifically. There's also a middle school and an elementary school that's on that property too. There's stuff that's happening inside that elementary school. I mean, Jackie's had stuff happen to her there.
Yeah, I'm going to have to leave this to you two. I haven't gotten to be in the other two schools, but I might have to figure out a way to make that possible someday.
Now, and really, one of the reasons why we haven't done the land is because it is a operating school, and it's not someplace you want to be walking around with the equipment and dowsing rods, because you're probably going to get stopped, and they're, we like to take in other people's feelings and considerations when we ghost hunt.
Yeah, we try to do that as much as possible. A lot of people don't like that type of stuff. You have a lot of police that make sure that the property stays safe and everything, because it is an open campus. That anybody can come onto it. You see people, driving their cars through or running or wherever like that. So you got to kind of be mindful of other people and respectful in that fact too. But the high school itself, I'm trying to think where else we have not been yet. I mean, there's so many different areas inside this high school that it's just got so much happening. Jackie's had stuff happen while you work in second shifts there.
I swear to God, after 7:00, there may not be a lot of live people, but there's a shitload of dead people in that school.
Well, and I've had other workers come up to me, tell me about things that they've seen. There was one guy who used to work there, he no longer works there, chased after somebody down the hallway. He was just checking at exterior doors, making sure all of them were shut. Saw somebody walk past him in the hallway. He was inside a room, walked past him. He went chasing after him, never found him. He's like, I should have caught up with him going right around the corner, but there was absolutely nobody there. But he swears it was somebody standing in that hallway, particularly, I think it was a woman he was saying that was walking by. So he thought maybe a student had snuck in somehow. This was more later at night. He chased him, never found a thing anyways. But, even me, myself, I've been there on the weekends by myself, just walking through things and making sure that, the school's how it's supposed to be. And, I could be inside cleaning a bathroom and I have to stop and look because I swear somebody's standing right behind me. There's an old custodian that used to work there that still kind of comes and checks on things, I guess you could say. That comes and does things there. There's actually 2 of them that I know of.
There are actually friendly ghosts. Usually, if you go in the dressing room, George Washington or Abraham Lincoln, whoever he wants to be that day, will show up. And I also have a man that wants to make his presence known. If I'm doing anything, he will stare at me until I look at him. The problem is that looking at ghosts, I understand you don't turn and face them fully. They disappear. So when I look, I do it real casually. I'm like Miss Cool, ghost hunter there. And I look at his feet and I let my eyes travel up. But by the time I get to his face, he's on to me and he's gone. I don't know what his face looks like, but I can describe what he's wearing.
It is crazy. I mean, you got to wonder, is it just a rule that you're not allowed to see on face front?
Maybe he's
seriously, though.
Ugly. Maybe he's ugly.
Maybe. I would like to add, too, before you move on, that when we were talking about the younger man with the REM pod when the boys were there, and we talked about it was a safe ghost hunt and things of that nature, I've learned that regardless of what you think is there and how much you trust that it's safe, you still can't let your guard down. This is the one and only place that I have brought someone home with me.
Yeah.
And that is simply because in my mind, I was comfortable there. I've met Josh there and had lunch. I've hung out there on a Saturday when he was working. And so it's kind of like a second home. And so I just didn't think anything about it. And then suddenly stuff was happening at my house. And it was like, okay, I finally had to sit it down and talk to it because it was scaring people in my home that also was aware someone was there but didn't know who. I mean, the child just, enjoyed being in a family situation, which just breaks my heart. And he went back, as simple as, hey, we have to go back. We can visit you here, but you have to stay here. So I guess I'm saying no matter how simple it seems or safe, you still don't ever want to bring them home.
Yeah.
Right.
And on that note, we're going to have to end this conversation. So we're going to pick up on a part 2 when we'll have Eli and Jasper as our guests also.
Should be fun.
Yeah. Any last words for this podcast, guys?
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I already threw mine in there just because in my brain, I knew we were getting close to the end. I'm like, I've been wanting to say this.
All right. And on that note, this has been Not Just Ghost Stories. We have been your hosts, Josh,
Laura,
and Jackie.
And until next time, you can find information and contact us on our website at notjustghoststories.com and see evidence that we've discussed on Facebook at Not Just Ghost Stories. Thanks.